Welcome back to Growth Colony. For those of you who are first-time listeners, you'll be hearing from B2B founders, CMOs, and marketing leaders. We chat about the newest and most effective tools and strategies in the B2B space. I'm Alex Hipwell with Xgrowth, and your co-host for this podcast, where we go candid with our guests' successes and failures, so you don't make the same mistakes. At least hopefully you don't. Let's dive in.
Hi everyone, Shaheen with Xgrowth. We are here with Luke Marshall, and we're going to sit down and have a talk about hidden costs of B2B marketing in this episode of Growth Colony Podcast. Listen up. Hi Luke, thanks for joining us.
Hi Shaheen, how are you?
I'm good. I'm pretty good. I'm excited about this episode and to make this happen. So thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I believe this is the first episode, so I feel privileged to be a participant in this endeavor of yours.
No, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. And it's exciting to launch the podcast, the Australia B2B marketing podcast. So looking forward to it. Absolutely. Let's talk about hidden costs of B2B marketing. It's an interesting topic. And it's probably something that is not discussed very often because maybe cost is not a very attractive concept. But I think it's a very important concept, and it's something that a lot of business owners or whoever it is that is engaged in marketing might not take into consideration when they're about to embark on that journey and start do marketing. And if they're working with an agency, or if they're working with an agency, agencies usually don't want to maybe show those hidden costs because that might be something that they could later on charge. But even internally, sometimes a lot of things are underestimated when they're about to embark on something. So, what are your thoughts on that? And maybe on that note, it would be good to get your thoughts. But before we do that, can you tell us a little bit about some people who might not know you and might have not heard about you? Can you give us a quick intro of who you are and what's your background?
Yeah, of course. I'd assume most people don't know who I am. I try and keep a lowish profile and probably talk a lot of crap on Twitter. So unless you're an avid Twitter user, you might not be aware of me. But I've worked in marketing for the last 13 years or so, worked across agencies, was very fortunate to be able to work for Google in Singapore and Sydney, worked in a consultative fashion over the years, worked in the startup space, joined Facebook in Melbourne and led their FMCG sales marketing efforts over 2 years with clients like L'Oreal, Mondelez, CUB, and it's sort of been segueing into consulting again. So left an agency at the end of last year and really enjoying, putting my feelers out, seeing where I can add value, and currently working with a few businesses on, I guess, more in the B2B space actually. So, helping them realize how they can acquire more customers, how to position themselves when they are talking to customers, and really always mapping it to an outcome, which sort of, I guess, bleeds into what the topic is that you've mentioned, which, there's hidden costs involved with engaging consultants, agencies, internal teams, and being aware of them can be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into it. What are some of the, like for you when you're working with these organizations, what are some of the hidden costs that you tend to come across that it is something that people might have not taken into consideration before?
Yeah, it can be really obvious to people that, buy service X and it comes at Y price. But with hidden costs, when you're looking at a line item, there are things that you might not be aware of that can cost further money down the road or further time. And some of the things I've noticed around this area is one is like time to educate. So you might have an outstanding solution And it can take time to educate people on the merit of that solution, which is a cost you might not have factored in. When you're in B2B space, there's usually lots of stakeholders, some being domain experts and others being new to marketing. And so educating the various stakeholders is probably another thing that you might not consider. Hidden operational costs. So you joked about a little bit at the start where agencies might not want you to know all the costs involved, and some can pick up, can catch you unawares. So that's something to be aware of. And also, what you're missing out on. So you might commit to something, but you're doing that at the expense of something else. So there's probably a hidden cost in missing out as well. And just one extra one that sort of springs to mind as well is lower cost work environments. So you could outsource it to the job to somewhere where it's a bit cheaper to execute or get it done. But there's hidden costs around that too, because there might be an extra need to train, an extra need to communicate, and end up costing more hours than you might have otherwise factored in.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. That's a really good list. Let's dive in there and kind of explore those items that you mentioned. So the very first one that you mentioned was time to educate, and I know this is probably a massive one that people misinterpret or don't take into consideration at all. Like buying a CRM and not training the sales and marketing team. What are your thoughts on that? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the time to educate can sort of almost be an extraneous line item at the end. But if the tool or strategy or approach you're undertaking is on the higher end side or more advanced, that extraneous line item might be a lot larger than what you're giving credit. You use the example of a CRM. We've got there's businesses I've worked with that have deployed this sort of the largest ones out there, like Salesforce, and they're sort of multi-year operations that when it's in the pre-sales and the sign-off stage, maybe aren't fully factored in as hey, maybe this will take more time to educate a business than what we're thinking. And on a smaller level, it can be things like the time to educate your stakeholders. So you might be ready to sign off on that new email marketing solution, but you've got to educate maybe legal that this is something worthwhile, and or operations that this is actually a cost that will save us money in the long run. And that championing through can be a cost that you might not have factored in when you were keen to sign it off in the first place.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think I've heard of a rule of thumb that they're saying if you're buying a tool, you got to take into consideration the change management cost of that tool is 3 times the price that you're paying for the tool. So the change management component, which education is definitely in there, is not just the cost of the tool, but it could be multiple times that, and you got to take that into consideration in order to be able to get the maximum benefit out of that. The other thing that you mentioned was stakeholder management. Can you tell us a little bit about that when it comes to marketing?
Yeah, like most marketers know a fair amount about project management and being able to get something in from inception through to delivery through to measurement and ensuring it works. By stakeholder management, I mean that I guess the people element and the different parties that are involved in an enterprise or a larger organization where you're not only trying to marshal the project through, but you're also playing the game a little bit in terms of understanding the various hierarchies at play, the various power dynamics, what departments need, what their levers and drivers are, and you'll constantly be under pressure to explain a concept, explain it in a way that a department understands, and then re-explain it, often succinctly, which if you don't have experience in doing that, it can be frustrating. It can be a less visible cost to what you were talking about, change management. And it also sharpens, I guess, your internal marketing capabilities. Like, you need to know when to zoom into the detail when you're talking to someone who's detail oriented, and also knowing when to deliver the elevator pitch. Like, this helps us get X, let's move on. And a lot of that comes from the personal dynamics and your ability to read relationships that is definitely a learned skill.
No, yeah, that's very true. That's very true. And the other thing that is probably very closely aligned with stakeholder management costs that are there is the operational costs, right? And you mentioned that earlier. Can we explore that a little bit? And what do we mean by operational costs?
Yeah, so I guess your obvious operational costs there, you're signing on an agency, or you're committing to a new tool, or you're committing some time to a new approach that you want to undertake. So, there's things like cost of tools, and what budget you're going to spend on this, hosting and hours spent. Like, these are all very visible operational costs that you might tag to a project or initiative and go, okay. But I think that the hidden costs element, or the hidden operational cost, could be things attached to the initiative that might not happen at the speed that you want. So things like the time it takes to learn, the time it takes if they don't get it in the time that you've estimated, the time it takes to ramp up and have this solution or initiative firing on all cylinders, the returns that you're projecting and whether they align on sort of what you anticipated. And most of B2B marketing involves dealing with some sort of sales resource who is selling you a solution, and they will generally, not to demonize anyone, they will generally promise the world. They will say, this is a silver bullet, this will solve your problems and generate a return. And sometimes those returns don't come at the pace that you wish, and that's probably a hidden cost, because unexpected things come up, especially in larger organizations.
Yeah, very true. And I think, going back to the point that you mentioned that, hey, yeah, taking into consideration the hours that it takes to do something, those might be super obvious. I think in some situations that might also not be the case. We do, as you know, we do a lot of ABM campaigns, and they're very, very resource intensive. And when somebody says, hey, we're doing ABM, we're going to be sending letters out to people, that's not going to have much cost. It's it's the cost of the paper and the printing and the envelope and then the post. What you don't realize is how much time it's going to take to prepare that one envelope. So and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, we're just going to send 50 envelopes out. But what you haven't taken into consideration is that could potentially take away 2 days of one person, 2 solid days. Of 16, all of us, initially you're saying, hey, it's just a couple of envelopes. It's probably about $1 of a stamp for the envelope, and a little bit of here and there. Let's say it's $100, right? That's going to be $100. But when somebody sits down and actually do it, and it takes away 2 days of theirs, right? Whatever rate let's say they're $40 an hour resource, which is not unreasonable to assume, that all of a sudden is upwards of $500. So that $100 of hey, we're just sending some letters just became multiplied by 5 or 6. So I think that operational cost sometimes looks visible, quote unquote, might also not be the case.
And it reminds me of sort of the tip of the iceberg analogy. You sort of got those envelopes at the tip, which is the very visible cost. So then you've sort of got the main part of the iceberg underneath, which, breaking it down, like who's going to get the brief for the copy? How's the letter going to be crafted? And even one that I think, who's going to follow up afterwards? Like, have you accounted for the lag it takes for someone to read that and respond or be prompted to respond? And, in a world where everything's, I guess, increasingly transactional in that everything can be measured, there's still things that don't jump immediately to mind that absolutely need to be factored in as well.
I totally agree with you. The last thing that you said, or I think the one before last, was things that you're missing out on, and how that could be a cost. What do you mean by that?
I guess it can really come down to knowing what your strategy is and being sure that what you're opting into is the right approach for the job. And so, because if you're not 100% sure or haven't spent the time front-loading the analysis and the engineered the right approach, then the risk is there's things you're missing out on. And so someone might tell you, we need to go big on SEO for this business. We know there's a lot of long tail. We know, time well spent on SEO is going to have good returns for our business in the long run. Cool. You might be on board with that. But one of the hidden costs might be a sales team that's looking for direct response copy to get leads in tomorrow. Like, they're looking for very short turnaround, direct mail, EDMs, punchy white papers that can generate, returns for that sales team. Now, a hidden cost is you've committed your resource to SEO. Your content team or agency or even yourself are sort of building out as much content that can sort of be guided on a longer time horizon. And so, a hidden cost is committing too far one way at the expense of other things. And so, you need to be aware of what you're trading up and down with, and also be sure that what you're focusing on is what is necessary, and that there's measurement and a feedback loop in place. Because if you are focusing down on that channel, you need to be able to justify it works and prove it works.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people fall into that trap. SEO and SEM are probably the oldest tools of the digital marketing trade. So a lot of people talk about it. A lot of people have heard about them. Not a lot of people might have heard about, how you could leverage LinkedIn organic for the growth of your business. But a lot more people have heard about search engine optimization. And you're right. When they think marketing, they're like, okay, I guess I have to do SEO. And that becomes a challenge. That becomes, you just like you said, they tie down their resources in one area, and some of the other areas that might have a much immediate impact would be neglected. No, that's really a good point. The other thing that you mentioned, there was one last point. What can you remind me? What was the last thing that you mentioned?
I think it was lower cost environments, and in terms of, I guess, orchestrating, committing to lower cost environments, particularly, so thinking like things like outsource freelance work via the likes of an Upwork or a freelancer, or just committing to dev team that's overseas that might have cheaper rates because of the lower cost of labor. And there is absolute merit to orchestrating projects in this fashion. I'm not neither for nor against, and have done very high-end work and very cost-efficient work in the past. But there's definitely hidden costs associated with pursuing cost efficiency at the expense of maybe things you haven't accounted for, like quality control, needing to over-explain what you need, multiples upon multiples of revision that aren't quite getting the solution you're after. So, some of these solutions it can end up inflating costs and being more than the original budget, just based on you wanting to avoid the one thing that you needed to do, which is pay for a solution that fits the brief and is at the right price.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I think, I think a lot of people make that mistake by saying, I'm going to go remote and I'm going to save cost. And I think that's a great strategy. But it's a great strategy if you are very well versed in terms of what you need and what you want, right? And if you are able to find talent that, correct, they can do it for a lower rate and they will do a very good job. But if you are not very well versed in, let's say, the process of building a website or the running campaigns, if you're not very well versed and you can't pick the right pieces and put them in the right place, then it's very dangerous of going the cheap route because you can't tell good from, not that it's bad, but quality from non-quality.
Yeah. I really like what you said about the difference between sort of being sort of unaware or not as educated on what you need versus knowing exactly what you need and being able to be prescriptive. I think it's worth a point reiterating, because you come to say an email marketing expert, they might not write all their copy, but they are legit. They know how to write a prescriptive brief to an external resource that will help get the best possible result, and they can oversee it and know what to look for and how to engineer a brief that will get that cost-efficient outcome. Whereas if you've never done sustained email marketing before, and you throw that out to say a lower cost work environment, you aren't going to get quality back. And so I think striking the right balance and choosing what projects you are going to save a few pennies on, because it's more manual work and you can sort of guide it. It's a learned skill and something that is key.
Yeah, absolutely. You got something ringing there.
Sorry, hang on. Where's this?
We'll cut it off. It's fine.
Yeah.
We'll cut that part out. No, absolutely. I personally had a experience where we had a client who had gone through that process and they were not familiar with quality, right? What dictates in quality and how does the X process, whatever the process is, how does the X process work, right? They didn't have that understanding. And, in the span of, I think 3 years or so, they redesigned and rebuilt their website 3 times. Expensive, and they didn't necessarily save a lot of money as well. They were expensive exercises, but not being familiar with what are all the pieces that go in and how that pans out is I think, just like you said, it's very crucial.
Yeah, I just thought of another one just based on what you said, which was a hidden cost can be the need to do it again. To what you said, like you might anticipate that you've aligned with someone who can deliver this solution, and then it needs a round 2. no one budgets for round two, but that is a hidden cost if you don't get it right the first time.
Very true. You know, that's actually when you say that, I was in a different life. I was in software development, right? And in that space, what a lot of people who are new to software development, they're building a solution. What they don't realize is if you are putting a piece of software out for the first time, and the users are going to play with it, you are going to have multiple iterations of that software improve based on user feedback. Nobody thinks about that. A lot of, people who are new to that space think that, hey, I'm going to put this out and it's going to be great. Not taking into consideration that within maybe even 6 months, your application is going to be completely different, or to a massive degree different from what you built, where you've only taken into consideration, I'm just going to build an application and it's going to work. So that's a very good point. Fantastic. This was, we went through 6 really solid points. And what I have over here is the six main points were, number 1, the time to educate on whatever it is that we're doing. Number 2 is the stakeholder management. Number 3, hidden operational cost. And number 4, it's what you're missing out. Number 5 was going cheaper, and paying the price for that. And number 6 was now I'm blanking.
That's all right. I remember this one too, because no one budgets for a round 2.
For round 2. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You get it right the first time.
No, thank you. So
thank you.
And on that note, this was a great episode, Luke. Now, if people want to know more about you or reach you, what is the best way that they can hit you up?
Yeah, awesome. So on LinkedIn, I'm pretty active too. So I just look up Luke Marshall or Marshall on LinkedIn, and Twitter is like I joked about at the start. I love a bit of banter on Twitter, so just follow Marshall on Twitter.
Marshall. How do you write that?
Marshwah. So
fantastic.
It's been a good handle for me over the years.
Fantastic. Well, you heard it, everyone. Make sure you hit Luke up. And on that note, Luke, again, thank you so much for this episode, and thanks for everyone for listening. And we'll be with you in the next episode. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode. If you enjoyed it, we'd love it if you rate and review it on Apple Podcasts or your platform of choice. And for more B2B growth content, check out our website, growthcolony.org. Looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Have a great day.